It all began with a peculiar email flagged in the early hours at the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, a new initiative launched under the Trump administration to ferret out government waste and fraud. Elon Musk, appointed as a special advisor to DOGE, wasn't your average bureaucrat. Armed with a background in data science, engineering brilliance, and an unstoppable drive, Musk had one goal: tear down the opaque fortress of Washington's unchecked spending. His first target? USAID, an agency that traditionally flew under the radar, cloaked in the goodwill of international humanitarianism. But when internal financial records began surfacing showing billions in untraceable overseas transfers, Musk raised his eyebrows. Something wasn't right. Meanwhile, across the country in Louisiana, Senator John Kennedy was already raising alarms about the government's bloated budget. Known for his razor-sharp wit and no-nonsense style, Kennedy had been one of the few on Capitol Hill who questioned how America could afford ballooning deficits while potholes still peppered rural roads and schools begged for funding. Their paths crossed at a classified congressional budgetary briefing. Musk, surrounded by charts and a digital board glowing with financial anomalies, was presenting findings from his preliminary audit. "Gentlemen," Musk began, "eyes scanning the room, we found a leak. Not a drip. A flood. Nearly $4.7 trillion in spending over the last decade that we cannot fully trace or account for." Gasps filled the room. Some lawmakers leaned in. Others leaned back, arms folded, clearly uncomfortable. Senator Kennedy leaned forward, his southern drawl slicing through the tension like a hot knife. "Mr. Musk, are you telling me the folks at USAID have been writing blank checks with our taxpayers' money?" Musk nodded. "Worse. They've been issuing funds through complex routing paths, sending money to third-party NGOs, many of which are headquartered offshore and some of which appear to be shells, non-existent on paper except for a P.O. box in countries like Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, and even Syria. What the hell is USAID doing sending money to Syria? That place has been on fire since Bush left office," Kennedy growled. Musk clicked to the next slide. "It gets worse. We found $3.2 billion over 4 years that went to democracy-building programs in countries where no measurable results were reported. Vietnam received $100 million to subsidize electric vehicle programs. India received funds for setting up a transgender clinic. And $1.5 million went to LGBTQ outreach in Serbia." Kennedy stood up. "Let me get this straight. We got veterans sleeping on sidewalks in Louisiana, but we got Uncle Sam fund in EVs in Hanoi and rainbow flags in Belgrade." The room fell silent. Musk leaned back, calm but firm. "That's just what we found in the first 60 days. Kennedy turned to the rest of the senators in the room. "Well, fellas, it looks like we got ourselves a swamp leak big enough to drown an elephant and a donkey." The room erupted in murmurs. Some senators exchanged nervous glances. The kind that say he's not supposed to be saying that out loud. And just like that, the first domino fell. Later that night, the story began to break on X, formerly Twitter. Musk posted a single image, a USAID flowchart with dozens of red arrows stretching across the globe and a caption. $4.7 trillion. You deserve to know where it went. Hashtag the swamp is real, hashtag audit USAID. Within minutes, hashtag Swampgate began trending nationwide. 3 days after Elon Musk's explosive post shook the internet, Washington, D.C. felt like a city sitting on a powder keg. Major networks began cautiously touching on the story, but the real firestorm was playing out online. Independent journalists, whistleblowers, and even former USAID staff began leaking more damning documents anonymously to Musk's Doge portal. And in Louisiana, Senator Kennedy wasn't letting the issue cool down. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again," Kennedy declared in an interview on Fox News. "We need to find out who authorized these transactions, where the money went, and most importantly, who got rich off it. Because someone did, and it wasn't the American taxpayer." Meanwhile, Musk had tasked his ex-team with building an AI system named ARGO, short for Algorithmic Review of Government Operations, to trace the flow of international aid money. ARGO sifted through 40 years of records, mapping connections between contractors, NGOs, shell companies, and political donors. What it revealed was staggering. Over 900 entities had received cumulative payments totaling over $2 trillion. Many of them were development partners, but ARGO cross-referenced their board memberships with donor lists from political super PACs. A disturbing pattern emerged: millions in taxpayer-funded contracts were funneled to organizations who, in turn, donated heavily to both Democrat and Republican campaigns. It wasn't just about corruption anymore. It was about collusion, a web of money, influence, and power that reached deep into America's political elite. And then came the real bombshell, one file labeled Sand Dollar. Buried deep in a classified USAID database, the Sand Dollar operation showed that nearly $122 million had been transferred to humanitarian NGOs operating in Gaza, Lebanon, and parts of Syria. These NGOs were, according to international intelligence partners, known to have links with radical groups including Hamas and Hezbollah. Musk immediately brought the findings to Senator Kennedy. In a closed-door Senate subcommittee briefing, Kennedy slammed the folder on the table. I want everyone in this room to understand something. We're not talking about just wasting taxpayer money anymore. We're talking about funding terrorism. Do you hear me? An eerie silence followed. One senator cleared his throat. This could destabilize everything, state, treasury, even defense. If this goes public, it'll be the biggest scandal since Watergate. Musk didn't flinch. That's exactly why it needs to go public. Back in Louisiana, Kennedy held a town hall where he spoke without a teleprompter, his words raw and emotional. I don't care if it takes dragging every bureaucrat out of their ivory tower. If we send a single red cent to enemies of the United States, heads are gonna roll. The swamp's deeper than we thought, folks. But I promise you this, we're draining it one gator at a time. News channels began to shift. CNN's Jake Tapper hosted a panel reluctantly discussing the findings, while conservative media exploded with stories like USAID, United States Agency for Insanity and Disaster, and your tax dollars, they're terrorists. The White House remained quiet. Too quiet. That night, Musk received a cryptic message on his encrypted Signal app. You've opened Pandora's box. Back off before someone gets hurt. I friend in Foggy Bottom. Musk forwarded the message to Kennedy. The senator replied in one sentence. Let 'em come. I've wrestled bigger snakes than this in Louisiana bayous. As more documents trickled in and whistleblowers began requesting protection, it became clear this wasn't just a scandal. This was a coordinated, systemic heist, and it had been going on for decades. The American people were beginning to wake up. The whistleblower went by the alias Falcon. A career USAID official with 17 years of service, Falcon had seen it all. Foreign deals struck on golf courses in Dubai, U.S. taxpayer money laundered through 5 international NGOs before landing in secretive political lobbying groups, and fake invoices written by shell firms that never lifted a shovel, yet billed tens of millions for infrastructure development. He was done being silent. In a private location, Falcon sat across from Elon Musk and Senator John Kennedy with a hard drive and a printed dossier, codenamed Black Swan. His voice was steady but eyes were tired, the kind of tired only a conscience battling corruption for years could understand. Falcon spoke. You're both looking at a system, not a mistake, not a glitch, a full-blown operation. This is how Washington has quietly funded influence abroad and at home for nearly 25 years. No one asks questions because everyone gets a cut. Kennedy narrowed his eyes. You saying this ain't just a Democrat thing or a Republican thing? It's a swamp thing? Exactly, Falcon replied. This started under Clinton, expanded under Bush, and went full throttle under Obama. Trump tried to pull funding, but insiders rerouted through shadow authorizations. Even Biden's team has no idea how deep it goes. Musk scanned the files, over 1.2 terabytes of data, spreadsheets, email chains, blacklists, internal memos, and names. Politicians, diplomats, contractors, and even celebrities listed as ambassadors to dummy NGOs. Kennedy picked up a folder marked Project Sapphire. $650 million paid over 10 years to an eco-reforestation project in Sudan. The money had been billed for drones, satellite mapping, and irrigation. But Falcon confirmed not a single tree had been planted. Yet the NGO's founder was now living in a Bel Air mansion and was a top donor to 4 U.S. Senate campaigns. But what made Musk's blood freeze was a section titled Domestic Echoes, proof that some of these slush funds circled back into the U.S., paying for media influence, protest organizations, and algorithmic suppression of political content. He tapped the screen. This isn't just about foreign aid. This is about manipulating the American public. Falcon nodded grimly. The same NGOs getting money to fight misinformation overseas? They're running censorship campaigns here at home, flagging political posts, sponsoring fact-checkers, and even coordinating with social media execs. Musk clenched his jaw. That explains a lot. Later that week, Kennedy took the story to the Senate floor. He delivered a blistering speech that went viral within hours. Let me put it plain. A cabal of swamp critters has been laundering your hard-earned dollars, buying silence, buying influence, and even buying censorship. This ain't politics. It's organized fraud dressed up in a three-piece suit and a flag pin. The backlash was immediate. Senator Kennedy was removed from 2 bipartisan committees. Musk's Doge initiative was paused pending an internal ethics review. Falcon disappeared from his safe house and Musk's encrypted server came under cyber attack from unknown actors. But the American public? They were furious. Hashtags like hashtag expose the swamp, hashtag audit USAID, and hashtag where is Falcon trended worldwide. Protests erupted outside the Capitol and USAID offices in D.C., New York, and Chicago. Meanwhile, a small but growing group of lawmakers rallied behind Kennedy and Musk. Congressman Chip Roy, Senator Rand Paul, even Tulsi Gabbard made a return to the public stage, calling the scandal the greatest betrayal of public trust since the founding of this nation. The system was fighting back, but cracks were forming. And the biggest blow hadn't landed yet. Washington had faced scandals before, but never like this. Not with this scope, not with this firepower. After the bombshell speech on the Senate floor, Senator Kennedy knew he was being followed. His staffers reported maintenance vans parked for hours outside his Louisiana office. Anonymous calls warned him to shut it down before it gets dangerous. But Kennedy had been fighting gators his whole life, literal and political. He wasn't about to back down. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, now in possession of Falcon's entire Black Swan archive, dug deeper with the help of ARGO. They began identifying a central pattern. All roads led to a private foundation called the Hamilton Initiative. On the surface, the Hamilton Initiative was just another nonprofit, a think tank devoted to global development, peace-building, and economic transparency. But under its polished exterior, the foundation served as the nerve center for what Falcon had called the Cartel of Shadows, a network of 34 high-net-worth individuals and ex-officials operating entirely outside of government oversight. Here were the names of retired CIA directors, former USAID commissioners, IMF board members, and influential billionaires who made their fortunes through defense contracting, big tech, and international construction. They didn't just benefit from the swamp, they ran it. One document leaked from the Hamilton servers detailed a quarterly strategy meeting held in Zurich, Switzerland. The notes weren't subtle. Maintain narrative on aid transparency via sponsored op-eds. Continue cyber contracts via NGO fronts, priority on Africa, Middle East. Coordinate with social platforms for policy suppression using misinformation labeling. Increase indirect lobbying to discredit whistleblowers via anonymous intelligence leaks. It was all there, plain English and plain evil. Musk was stunned. They used humanitarian aid as a weapon. Not just to influence the world, but to control domestic thought. Senator Kennedy went public again, this time in a viral town hall live stream. This so-called Hamilton Initiative ain't about no founding father, it's about founding fear. They control where the money goes, who gets elected, what news we read, and who gets silenced. And they're doing it with your tax dollars. Backlash followed fast and hard. Major media outlets, some of which had received grants indirectly through Hamilton shell NGOs, launched a campaign against Kennedy and Musk. Hit pieces called them conspiracy theorists, unhinged billionaires, and national security threats. The Washington Post ran an editorial titled, "Kennedy and Musk's Fantasy Swamp, Dangerous Lies in the Age of Disinformation." But the public wasn't buying it. Independent podcasters, Substack journalists, and even former federal agents started confirming the leaks. Whistleblowers emerged from USAID, the State Department, and even the DOJ. One anonymous State Department official gave this chilling quote to an underground reporter. "Hamilton doesn't lobby policy, they write it. What you see on Capitol Hill is theater. The real decisions get made in their quarterly strategy rooms." Suddenly, Kennedy received a subpoena. Not to testify, but to cease and desist his unauthorized disclosure of classified operations. He laughed in the face of it on a live feed. "Let me get this straight. You're sending subpoenas to the guy exposing corruption, but not to the people running it? Hell no. We're just getting started." Musk, in response, uploaded the entire Hamilton archive to a decentralized blockchain server, uncensorable and accessible worldwide. Tens of millions downloaded it. It became known as the Swamp Files. And just when the American people thought they had seen it all, another revelation dropped. Among the members of the Hamilton Initiative was a former Vice President of the United States, and a current Supreme Court Justice's spouse had served on the board of a top-tier Hamilton-aligned NGO. The scandal wasn't just about money anymore. It was about influence, power, and blackmail. The cartel of shadows had infiltrated everything. The Capitol was electric. For the first time in decades, the American people weren't just tuned in, they were fired up. More than 50 million viewers across the nation and hundreds of millions around the world watched as the Congressional Special Hearing on Government Accountability and Global Aid opened its historic session. Elon Musk walked into the hearing room in a plain black suit. No tie. No entourage. Just a thick folder and a drive labeled The Swamp Files, Final Cut. Next to him sat Senator John Kennedy, calm and collected, his Louisiana drawl ready to slice through any bureaucratic nonsense like a hot knife through butter. Across the chamber sat the opposition, career politicians, former cabinet members, and high-powered lobbyists brought in as witnesses. Many had been exposed by the Hamilton leaks. But today their power seemed hollow. The first witness, Elon Musk. He opened his remarks without notes. This is not about partisanship. This is about theft of money, of trust, and of democracy. I'm not here to play politics. I'm here because $4.7 trillion of your money was stolen, laundered, and weaponized. And now finally we can name names. He laid out the mechanics, how NGOs were used as laundering vehicles, how shell companies in Cyprus funneled cash into domestic political campaigns, how foreign aid was rerouted into PR campaigns targeting U.S. citizens with subtle manipulation of media narratives and search engine results. Then came the bombshell. One member of this very committee, Musk said, locking eyes with a senior senator, has a spouse listed as a board member on 3 NGOs that received over $340 million from Hamilton-backed aid initiatives with no audit trail. The room fell silent. The senator's face flushed. The camera cut away quickly, but the internet had already seen it. Next up, Senator Kennedy. He pulled no punches. I've sat in this chamber for a long time and I've seen a lot of ugly. But this ain't just politics gone wrong. This is a parasite that's been feeding off the taxpayers while pretending to be virtuous. You stole from veterans, from schools, from hard-working Americans trying to put food on the table. He waved a folder in the air. These are contracts, phony ones, signed by agencies that don't even exist anymore. But the payments? They're still going out. Every single month. This isn't mismanagement, it's racketeering. The committee broke into chaos. But before order was restored, a young aide burst into the chamber. He handed a document to the chairwoman, who read it, eyes widening. Mr. Chairman, she said, her voice trembling, I've just received confirmation that the Department of Justice, under pressure from multiple state attorneys general, has issued 18 federal indictments based on the testimony and evidence provided by Mr. Musk and Senator Kennedy. Gasps filled the room. The indictments included 2 former USAID directors, a former White House chief of staff, the CEO of a major humanitarian organization, 3 high-ranking lobbyists, 1 sitting U.S. senator, and most shockingly, a former vice president of the United States. Arrests began live on national television. News helicopters followed black SUVs as agents carried out coordinated operations across D.C., New York, San Francisco, and Geneva. Twitter, now X, exploded. Hashtag swamp collapse. Hashtag Musk testifies. Hashtag Kennedy for president. Hashtag where is Hamilton? Hashtag arrest them all. By nightfall, an emergency session of Congress was called. A resolution was introduced to create an independent, citizen-led oversight board to audit all foreign aid spending. And for the first time in modern history, it passed with near-unanimous bipartisan support. The swamp was bleeding. Days later, Elon Musk returned to Tesla's headquarters. He refused interviews. Just tweeted. Truth is a virus. And now it's spreading. Senator Kennedy, meanwhile, became an overnight national hero. People gathered outside his home in Louisiana holding signs that read, "You did what no one else would." And though the fight wasn't over, one thing was clear. The cartel had been exposed. The $4.7 trillion scheme had unraveled. The shadows had names now. And the swamp, though wounded, had finally met its reckoning.